You better get your ass up here.
My mom literally called the sheriff department the day before because he was stalking her. She even showed them that the PTO that she was granted for life Wednesday from the divorce, and they did nothing.
13 months before she died, Krystal Evans sat down and wrote the name of the man who would kill her. She put it on Facebook, public. No privacy settings, no close friends list, no whisper to a sister in a locked thread. She typed his full name where the whole town could see it, and she told them that if she ever turned up dead, he was the one who did it. That is not a figure of speech. That is not me reaching for a hook. She wrote, in plain words, that this man would not stop following her, would not stop showing up everywhere she went, and that she was building a paper trail on purpose, so that when it happened, nobody could stand around afterward and pretend they had no idea. She was right about every part of it, the stalking, the danger, the ending. Krystal Evans called her own murder more than a year out, in writing, by name, in front of an audience of friends and neighbors who liked the post and shared the post and did exactly nothing that could stop it. And here is the thing almost nobody says out loud about this case. The paper trail she built to keep herself alive may have been the exact thing that guaranteed she would need it, because the man she was naming had spent decades making sure no one in his life knew who he really was. And Krystal was about to tell all of them. To understand why a Facebook post became a death sentence, you have to go back, not to the shooting, to the marriage. They met around 27 years before any of this. Two young people who, by every account including her own, built something that looked solid from the outside. They got married. They raised children together. They built a trucking and contracting operation from nothing, the kind of business where he ran the equipment and the heavy side of things, and she ran the money, the contracts, the numbers, the property. People who knew them said Krystal was the engine. She understood how money moved, and she moved with it. They took the kids on real vacations. They had on paper, made it. Then April of 2020, Krystal was in a head-on collision with a truck, and it nearly ended her. According to her own account of that year, she came out of it disabled, her body rebuilt with metal, having to learn how to walk again from the beginning. And in the middle of that recovery, something happened that she chose to make public the way she made so much of her life public. She wrote that before the accident, she had actually been planning to leave the marriage. And then the crash came, and she watched her husband show up for her every single day, put his own injuries aside, fight to get her the care she needed. And she changed her mind. She wrote that they had fallen back in love. She wrote about commitment, about God, about marriages being worth the patience it takes to save them. She prayed every marriage got the kind of healing hers had gotten. Sit with that for a second, because it is the cruelest part of the whole story, and it is the part that gets skipped. She forgave him. She rebuilt herself out of a hospital bed and recommitted to the man. She told the world she was glad she stayed. And then, 3 years later, she found out what she had actually stayed for. Nobody can tell you the exact hour Krystal learned the truth. But at some point, after the better part of 3 decades, after the children, after the businesses, after the accident, she survived believing he was her partner through it. The picture she had of her marriage came apart in her hands. According to her own posts and to her family, Krystal discovered her husband had been living an entire second life, secret relationships with other men, carried on the whole time behind the one she thought was real. I want to be careful here, because the point of this story is not who he was attracted to. That is not the betrayal. The betrayal is what that discovery did to 27 years of her life. Every sacrifice, every year she pushed through, the lack of closeness she had explained away to herself quietly for a long time. The accident she fought her way back from because she believed in the man at her bedside. All of it, she now understood, had been standing on a foundation she was never allowed to see. And Krystal made a decision that a lot of women in her position do not get the chance to make. She refused to carry it quietly. She filed for divorce. She started pulling their finances apart, their property apart, the business apart. And she started talking to friends, to family, to the community. She told people exactly what had been going on. That is the moment everything turned. Because for some men, being left is survivable. Being exposed is not. The moment Krystal stopped protecting his secret, her ex-husband, according to her own posts and to law enforcement records, began doing the things she would document obsessively for the rest of her life. He started showing up everywhere. He texted constantly. He followed her. She posted that he was tearing apart the things she had built, her credit, her professional name, the business they had run together, methodically, piece by piece, like a man who knew exactly which threads to pull. And then she said, came the threats. Stop the divorce. Stop talking about my private life, or I will kill you. Most people, when a spouse says something like that, want to believe it is the heat of the moment. Krystal did the opposite. She believed him completely, and she went to work building a case while she was still alive to build it. In early 2023, she put up the post that the whole internet now knows her for. She named him. She wrote that if anything happened to her, he had done it, that he would not stop stalking and harassing her, that she had a divorce and a protective order in motion, that she was living in hell trying to get away from this man, and that she needed everyone to make sure he was held accountable. She left it up. She did not take it down when it got uncomfortable. She kept it there like a flare, and she kept feeding the record. Every time he showed up where he was not supposed to be, she logged it. She saved messages. She posted a photo of him following her, a man already served with a protective order, caught on camera trailing the woman he had threatened to kill. She went after the assets too. When he kept business property that was hers, she brought the police to retrieve trucks, posted online asking people to report one she was still missing, got it back and repainted it. She was not a woman in hiding. She was a woman assembling an exhibit. In August of 2024, weeks before the end, she wrote it as plainly as a person can. That it was sad she had to walk around terrified for her life and her children's. That if something happened to her, people should know who did it. That this man had said many times that he was going to kill her. That she was posting to leave a paper trail. That he was extremely dangerous. Read that and then remember what I told you at the start. She did everything, the safety experts, the advocates, the hotlines, all of them. Everything they tell a woman to do. Document it, report it, get the order, tell people, leave a record. Krystal did all of it, at a level most victims never manage, with a discipline that is honestly staggering when you lay it out. So here's the question this case forces, and it is not a comfortable one. If a woman builds the most airtight paper trail imaginable, names her killer in public a year in advance, gets the protective order, calls the police, and walks into a courthouse full of armed deputies and still ends up dead, then what exactly is the paper trail for? Because the answer this case gives is brutal. The paper trail was never going to stop him. For a certain kind of man, the documentation is not a deterrent. It is an accelerant. Every post that exposed him was to him. Another reason she could not be allowed to keep talking. She was not just leaving him. She was dismantling the version of himself he had shown the world for 30 years, in public, with receipts. And the system that was supposed to step into that gap, the courts, the deputies, the law itself, kept finding reasons it could not. Let me show you the gap, because this is where it gets infuriating. Before the killing, the sheriff's office had been to their home more than once. These were not strangers to law enforcement. According to the sheriff, deputies had answered several calls there for fighting. But, and this is the trap Krystal lived inside, Georgia's family violence law says the primary aggressor shall be arrested. Shall. It sounds strong until you learn what it requires. It requires someone to be able to point clearly and say, that one is the threat. And in their house, the sheriff said that clarity never came. Sometimes she said he hit her or pulled a gun. Sometimes he said she came after him. The sheriff said that on at least one occasion, both of them admitted the fight was mutual. Witnesses, when there were any, said they did not see what was described or said it did not happen that way. No clear aggressor, no arrest. Tom Mallory, by the sheriff's own account of the pattern, knew exactly how to stay just inside that line. And every time he did, the law looked at a woman with a folder full of evidence and said, not yet, not clear enough. Which brings us to the last week of her life, and to a detail almost every version of this story online either gets wrong or skips entirely. The reason both of them were at the Spalding County Courthouse that week was not the divorce. The divorce was already done, finalized days earlier, with a lifetime protective order signed in the same stroke. She was, by her daughter's account, happy, free. They were talking about throwing a party. No. They were at the courthouse because Tom Mallory was facing criminal charges of his own, forgery. The man had been charged with forging his way through the finances of the woman he was supposed to have built a life with. First-degree forgery, third-degree forgery. The financial dismantling she had been screaming about online turned into actual counts on an actual docket. So picture the room. The victim is there, the accused is there, and in that hearing, a judge issued a warrant for his arrest. This is the moment. This is where a different decision saves her life. The judge had the warrant. The man was standing right there. And instead of having him taken into custody on the spot, instead of the deputies in that building walking him to a cell, the judge, according to the family, told him he could turn himself in the following Monday. Go home. Come back in a few days. We trust you to surrender yourself. He walked out of that courthouse a free man with an active murder weapon's worth of motive and a head start. And the day before all of this, Krystal had made one more call. She phoned the sheriff's department to report that he was stalking her in violation of the order she had just been granted for life. Her daughter says nothing came of it. So on the morning of September 13, 2024, Krystal Evans walked out of the Spalding County Courthouse. She passed deputies in the lobby. She walked to her car, parked on the street outside. She got in, and Tom Mallory drove up beside her and fired multiple rounds through the window. Deputies at the front of the building heard the shots and moved, but he was already pulling away. A marked unit got behind him. He would not stop. When he finally did, he turned the gun on himself. Krystal died there, in the car, outside the building full of people whose entire job was to keep order. Now here is where I have to correct the record, because the internet has this case frozen at the wrong ending. Search this story today, and you will find video after video that stops right here and tells you Tom Mallory survived. Critical condition, in the hospital, the community waiting for him to face justice. He did not survive. Tom Mallory died 15 days later on September 28, 2024, in an Atlanta hospital from the wound he gave himself. And I need you to understand what that actually means, because it is the real gut punch of this whole thing, and it changes how you read everything he did. There will be no trial. There will be no jury. No one will ever stand in a courtroom and read Krystal's posts back into the record, while the man who earned them sits at the defense table. The forgery charges die with him. The murder charge dies with him. Every piece of that paper trail she built with such terrible discipline, names, the dates, the photo of him following her, the year of warnings, none of it will ever be argued in front of 12 people who could convict. He made sure of that. The same way he dismantled her finances methodically. The last thing he dismantled, with the last bullet, was accountability itself. She spent a year building a case so airtight that no one could ever say who did it. And he answered by making sure that case would never be tried. So the question her daughter is left holding is not who did it. We know who did it. Krystal made certain of that, in public, in advance. The question is whether anyone failed her on the way to that car, and the people in charge have been arguing about it ever since. The sheriff put out a long public statement. He said the surveillance video showed Krystal walked through that lobby and past his deputies and never personally asked for an escort to her car. He said the request that day came from a friend made to a clerk, not to a deputy. He walked through the whole history of those murky domestic calls and the primary aggressor problem. And then he said something that, coming after her death, lands like a stone. He said maybe it was not a deputy or his agency that failed. Maybe it was the law itself. Improvements to the law, he said, yes, those need to be made. Her daughter Precious heard that statement for what it was missing. She pointed out that in all of it, not once did the sheriff offer condolences. Not once did he say a word about her mother as a person. The statement was long and detailed and careful, and it was about why the office could not have done more, and it said almost nothing about the woman in the car. Precious said it was written to clear a name, just not Krystal's. And whatever you make of the escort dispute, whether Krystal asked or her friend asked, or the message died somewhere between a clerk and a deputy, the need was not hidden. There was a fresh warrant against a man who had spent a year being publicly named as a killer in waiting. Someone standing right next to her thought she needed protection getting to her car, and she did not get it. So lay the whole thing end to end, the way it actually happened. A woman discovers her marriage was a lie. She leaves, she is threatened, she documents everything, names her killer in public a full year out, gets the protective order, calls the police the day before, and walks into a courthouse where that same man is facing criminal charges and a judge has just signed a warrant for his arrest. And she still does not make it back to her car alive. That is not the story of one bad decision by one person. That is a series of doors, every one of which was supposed to be held open for her, and not one of which was. Which is why her family decided the paper trail was not going to end with her. After the funeral, supporters and a local pastor began pushing for something they are calling Krystal's Law. Proposed to a state representative for the 2025 legislative session, aimed squarely at the gaps that let a documented named court-involved threat walk free long enough to commit murder. It is early. It is, in the pastor's own words, something to start the conversation. But think about what it represents. The man made sure there would never be a verdict in a courtroom. So the only verdict left is the one that gets written into law, and that is the one her daughter is now fighting for. Krystal Evans came from immigrant parents who crossed an ocean for a better life. She built one with her own hands. She survived a crash that should have killed her and taught herself to walk again. She loved hard enough to forgive a man she had every reason to leave. And when she finally found the courage to walk away from something that was destroying her, she did the one thing we are all told to do. She wrote it down. She told the truth out loud with her name on it so that no one could ever claim they did not know. They knew. She made sure they knew. The post is still up. So I will leave you with the question this case will not let go of, and I genuinely want to hear where you land on it. Krystal did everything right, more than almost any victim manages. The documentation, the order, the call, the courthouse, and the system met every piece of it with a reason it could not act, while the man she warned everyone about walked out a free man and finished what he had been promising to do for a year. So tell me, after everything she did, where exactly did this become unstoppable? And what would Krystal's law have to actually say to make sure the next woman who does everything right is still alive to see it pass? If this is the kind of story that matters to you, take a second to like, comment, and subscribe. It does more for this channel than you know. And if there is someone in your life who needs to hear it, send it to them. Rest in peace, Krystal Evans.